Yo guys, what is up? My name is Grizzly, and today I'm gonna do a Darius guide. And before I start this video, I just wanted to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and also I hope you have fun at New Year's. So, Darius is one of my favorite champions, if not my favorite champion through all time. It's basically what, back in the day when he first was released, I think it was in Season 3 or late Season 2? I can't really remember, but either way, as soon as he released, I knew that this was a kind of a champion that I really would like to play a lot of. And since his rework, I think I don't know, Darius kinda lost a bit of his uniqueness, because he was like this insane lane bully before that really scaled off unless you snowballed really hard, and he is still the same, kind of, but he's not that lane dominant in some matchups. He can get quite shit on in some matchups, especially if you fall behind, you're quite screwed. But he now scales so much better, so overall he's a much better champion, and after his rework he was played a lot during Worlds as well, so and then he got nerfed afterwards, but he's still really good in solo queue. So I thought I would start this guide off like my last guide, which was for Yorick, and I'm gonna go through his abilities. So I'm starting off with the Q, and it's basically a channel ability, but you can move while you're doing it. And it basically hits for a lot of damage, and it's an inner and outer circle, and if the outer circle hits, I think that's like 50% of the radius, or a bit less than 50% of the entire radius. It deals a lot more damage, and Darius also heals for 12% of his missing health per enemy champion hit by the blade. So he heals for a maximum of 36% of his maximum health, which is super insane when you couple it with Spirit Visage and the Runic Affinity, Runic Armor, I can't remember, the Mastery, either way in the result tree, which increases healing by 8%. So this ability is kind of what makes Darius. If you hit the outer circle, you also get a bleed on them, which stacks up to 5 times. So I can go through his passive now. Basically, Darius can stack up to 5 stacks of his bleed, and for each stack the damage is increased, and at 5 stacks it deals a lot more damage, and Darius gains a lot of AD. And his ult also scales on depending on how many stacks you have on your opponent. So his W is a standard auto stack reset. This is the ability you max last, and Q is the ability you max first, because the only thing maxing this does is basically lowering the cooldown, but the damage does not get increased whatsoever. So yeah, this ability is quite good. It does cost much mana, and if you last hit with it, 50% of the mana is refunded. So his E is what you max second, because it passively increases your armor penetration, and it also lowers the cooldown. So this is kind of a grab, you could say, or more like a pull, yeah. And it basically puts the opponent in perfect range for your Q. So a standard combo would be to pull them in, you'd slow them with your W, and then you move back a little because they will move somewhat, and then you hit them with the outer circle Q almost every time, unless they're like Irelia, which can Q onto your face. But you can also chain your E directly into your Q and leave them no room to kind of respond, but then you lose some of your damage, because then you have to wait to use for your W afterwards. But there's a lot of combos with this, and the more you play it, the more you will get used to it. So Darius Ultimate is kind of a very staple ability for the champion. It deals a lot of damage, especially in the later stages, and if you have 5 stacks on them. Also, if you can kill an opponent with it, you get the reset, so you can dunk another person. So this ability is super great. It's kind of what makes Darius. Okay, so I thought before we go into his like builds, or what my setup is, we would look at the different builds that people go. So first we're gonna look at champion.gg, which is platinum plus ranked, but I think this is NA only. So this isn't as relevant as the page that we'll go into later, but we'll still take a look at this. So as we can see, his win ratio is about 52%, which is super great. His play rate is 11%, so that's quite high, so you can't really one-trick Darius, especially considering his ban rate as well, because we'll be contested the 33% of the time pretty much. Player base average games played is 63, which is not that much actually, so most people that get good results with Darius don't even like one-trick him or even main him, so he's a really good champion to have in your top lane champion pool. This is his average stats. These don't really mean anything. You should never have like 6.5 deaths on average this zone, because this is quite low elo, but yeah. Damage dealt averages, this doesn't matter either way, but the overall placement can be interesting, and he's the #1 top lane statistically, but yeah. Okay, so win rate by patch, as you can see, he's had a spike here. It's because a lot of tanks are played top lane, and Darius completely shits on tanks. Win ratio by game length, as you can see here, his his win ratio lowers here. But if you're a really skilled Darius, it should be the opposite actually, because you can be punished like level 6 through 9 against good lane opponents, especially if you get camped, but Darius scales really well if you know what you're doing. Win ratio per games played, this is kind of a standard curve. Okay, so his build. Starting items are Black Cleaver, Merc Threads, Deadman's Plate, Spirit Visage, Randuin's Omen, and Guardian Angel. This is a quite solid build. If you just want a cookie cutter Darius build, I would build this, but most of the time you're actually against a AD opponent top, so I would actually go ninjas most of the time, but this is better for team fights for sure. And starting items, I would never start this, or yeah, I would start this against like Yasuo, maybe against Renekton if you're really scared to die. Basically champions that can kill you like level 1 through 4. Because Thorn Shield is basically like a guarantee that you won't die, and this start is super greedy, but if you're like way better than the opponent, you can build it, whatever. Skill order, as I said, this is like super horrid. This actually lowers Darius win ratio a lot. People that max W second that hasn't read what it does, it only lowers the cooldown. So make sure to max E and you will have a statistically 8% higher win ratio, even though this is quite flawed, but okay. Runes Mastery is this standard page, this is the most used, and we also have some cooldown reduction, like 10% flat. I would actually not go with this, but you can do it if you want to like shit on your opponents early. This mastery page is fine, but yeah, and you can see some of his matchups here. I'm not gonna go into these right now, but Darius is basically very strong against tanks, but he can get shit on against opponents that can kill him with a lot of damage, so that's basically it. Okay, let's go into the Korea server and see what his stats are here. So ban rating, he's only banned 1% of the games, 1.89%, which is like so much lower than 22%, and his win ratio is 51%. As you can see here, win ratio by game length, it actually goes up until the 40-minute mark, and then he falls off because when everyone has 6 items, he's quite easily kited, I guess, but like, as you can see here, this curve is completely different from the curve that we saw on the NA server. And his build is like quite the same. People go Styrax here a bit more, but yeah, masteries and runes should be the same. So I'm gonna go through my builds now, taking into consideration what we saw before. So I'm gonna make the classic Darius pages. So starting off, we're gonna look at the keystones first. Grasp is a good keystone for Darius if you want to be 1v1 and lane dominant. Courage is the best one for team fights, and Fervor of Battle can actually be used if you want to like purely split push and you want to scale very well into the 1v1. For example, if you're against like a Jax and you think it's only gonna be splitting and you think you can get an advantage 1v1, you can take Fervor and just like push the inhib and he can't do anything basically. Okay, so starting off, Unyielding is quite shit, so we're gonna go Recovery. I explained the differences between these two in my Jork guide. It's basically the same for Darius, so you can go back and watch that if you're interested. Here, Explorer, not that good if you're a laner. Siege Master, you're not going to be near your turret that much. You're going to be in the middle of the lane we're pushing. So we're going to take Tough Skin. We're going to take Runic Armor most of the time because he has a lot of healing. You can go Veteran Scars, or you should go Veteran Scars actually against like Riven, maybe against Yasuo if you're really scared of him, and matchups that can kill you early. This tier, go Insight, but if you're against a team or Quinn, go Perseverance, because you will be harassed so much as Darius, so you basically need this then. But you can actually always go Insight, especially if you're playing like at a really high elo or you're playing team ranked, then go Insight because it provides so much more map presence. Swiftness is super key for Darius, and then Grasp, as I said, if you want to like have a good laning presence, you want to harass them a lot in lane and you want to be lane dominant and stuff like that. But if you want to focus on the team fighting and also make sure that you scale well and you will never be a liability for your team, you take Courage because you'll have a giant ass shield that will make the enemies like want to kill themselves in team fights. This shield is actually super insane. Okay, and if you go this route, you basically want to go Fury because 2% of build damage is not much, and your ultimate deals true damage, which this does not affect. Then you want to go Feast if you're against a ranged opponent, and you want to go Fresh Blood if you're against a favorable melee matchup. However, if you're against a Riven, you still take Feast. Then you want to go Vampirism. You could go 3 points in Natural Talent for the extra AD and then 2 here, but I would just recommend going 5 in Vampirism. And then for the last tier, you always want to take Battle Trance, unless you're smurfing or you're a fucking god, then you can take Bounty Hunter because it gets more value the more kills you have. So this is the standard route, and you change these up, and you change this depending on matchup, and you change this depending on matchup, and this as well. Okay, so I'm gonna go the Fervor tree now. This basically looks the same all the way down here, and then obviously Armor Penetration and then Fervor. Then you go into Resolve and you do something like this, and depending on matchup you can go do this as well. So these are basically the masteries. As for runes, we did check a bit on them before, but I would always go attack speed on Darius. Every Darius one trick in high elo Korea and all Darius mains and even pro players go attack speed on Darius, because it makes him stack his passive a lot more fast, and it also helps with last hitting. And since he gets so much AD from his passive, attack speed gives him a lot more value. But you don't want to go something like 29% attack speed, because the 9 AD is actually very important in the early game. Then depending on matchups, you can go this page. Oh, I don't mean this page, I mean, yeah, this page, where you go, instead of 12 MR, you go 5 flat CDR and 5% scaling. That way you get 40%, so this is a bit more scaling if you're not against many AP champions. And you can also go the attack speed MR per level, where you gain MR per level like this. So this is also if you're against, for example, a Shen in lane. This would be the best choice if they have like an Orianna mid and then restful AD. This is the best page to go, because it will make sure that you can go into Black Cleaver and Deadman's Plate, for example, which is like the standard core items for Darius against tanks or AD bruisers, and then you will still have like more than double the MR once you fight Orianna in team fights, basically for free. So this will be the end of my Darius guide. For the builds in general, they are quite cookie cutter. We went through the standard like 3 item core here, and this is pretty much what you should build every game. If you have a standard game, you go this route, right? You go Black Cleaver, Deadman, Spirit Visage, and then you switch the boots depending on matchup. Swift is only if you're gonna go balls deep and you don't really give a shit. And then if you're snowballing, you can go Sterox Gauge, second item, and if you're behind, you go this route instead. And the statistics here are, it's not like this build is worse than the others. You can see it's like flat 50 and the others have almost 60%. It's just that when you go this build, you're behind from the start, because then you can't like afford the increased mobility and damage from Deadman's Plate, and you have to go like a lot more tanky with the Randuins. So yeah, starting items, pretty much always Corrupting Potion. If you think you can kill your opponent early, you can go Doran's Blade, or if you think you're gonna die early, go Doran's Shield. So that's basically it, guys. Thanks a lot for watching this guide, and I hope you have fun with Darius in solo queue, and I'll see you in the next video.